I'm talking with Gail Ship Granberry. Gail had what I've always thought was a very, very exciting broadcast career. First news director at a station in Texas, and the third in the nation.
For other news directors, they were just not going to come to the campus from time to time when he was president, because he felt that it was very important to be supportive of education and to encourage students. And it was a particularly sensitive time as we were heading into the Vietnam War, and he was looking for the support of students. I walked up to him and asked him if he would be willing to do an interview for my radio show. And after I was pretty much grabbed and thrown to the ground, not quite, but close, by a couple of Secret Service men, the president made them let me go and agreed to come sit in my closet, because that's where the radio studio was, and to do an interview. And so we did that. It was fun. I got to share it with news organizations all over the country. It was kind of cool.
My good friend across the street, Ren Geeson, remembers him from when she was a little girl, and Lyndon Johnson would deliver the university newspaper to her mother, who was a good friend of the president of the university, so he made sure she got the university paper every week. And Lyndon Johnson was not only the editor, but the paper boy.
It's really neat to know that the 36th president of the United States was a mom also. 1930 graduate of Southwest Texas State Teachers College, and that Southwest Texas State University, San Marcos as it is today, is still the only university in Texas, public or private, to have graduated a U.S. president. And I think, it does us well to remember that.
For one thing, this is the 100th anniversary of the Star. The only elected office Lyndon Johnson held when he was a student here was the editor of the University Star. So it meant a lot to him, and plus several of us who are involved in this museum have also been involved in the Star over the years, either as students or faculty members or staffers or whatever. And so it was a natural fit to celebrate the anniversary of the Star at this museum, honoring one of probably its most famous editors.
Well, you had a little involvement in the University Star as well. We're also elected as a student to an office, which was highly irregular and unusual. Could you tell us a little bit about your role? Because you're an exhibit subject, actually.
Been managing editor of the Star at the time the anti-war movement was had actually reached this campus, and the administration was trying to keep that quiet, not publicize it, and I was assigning reporters to cover it because it's a story, and a story does coverage, and also wrote editorials supporting people attending those, and wrote editorials criticizing the administration for its stance. So I was fired as managing editor of the Star. Those were back in the days before the First Amendment had reached university communities, and so then I became a full-blown anti-war activist. And whereas before, in earlier years, I had been kind of a questioner of the war. And in 1972, I was approached by a group of my fellow students who were active in the movement. They had decided to run someone for city council, and I asked them what I could do to help, and they told me that I could be the candidate. So I volunteered, and then much to my surprise, I won.
And we actually, back in my day, had to go to the San Marcos Record to set type for the Star. You know, we had no computers back then. So it was, in many ways it was such a different operation, but basically it's still the same. We covered the student news and what was going on in town that affected the students. I guess my little claim to fame, if we call it that, was that a friend and I, Bill Bowe, did an article on the LaGrange Chicken Ranch, and we won the Texas Intercollegiate Press Association Award for that. And I was so glad to see Amanda win so many awards just a month or so ago at TIPA.
The best memory you have about LBJ?
Well, interestingly enough, the best memory I have about LBJ was when I was working for Ralph Yarbrough in Washington after I graduated from college. And even though Yarbrough and LBJ didn't necessarily see eye to eye on everything, he always invited Yarbrough's staff to attend important functions just because he thought Texans in Washington should be included. And that was really one of the coolest things about it. He always acknowledged, you know, other fellow Texans who were living in Washington at that time, and that included me. I was 21, 22, something stupid like that.
So when President Johnson decided not to run for re-election, how did that affect you? I mean, what was your impression of all of that?
Well, I was shocked. I remember I was sitting in my parents' house waiting for my ride back up here to college, and he was involved in a race where Eugene McCarthy was running a kind of a guerrilla race that nobody gave him much shot of, and McCarthy won a primary and ran a lot closer, so when Johnson ended his speech with "I will not choose to run for President of the United States," I was shocked. And, you know, at that time I was beginning to have my doubts, but I admired Johnson a good bit. But then I became a Eugene McCarthy supporter. So.
Well, and in contrast, what's the worst?
I remember that I was living in Washington the day LBJ announced that he wasn't going to run. And it was such a shocking announcement. I don't think that many people were expecting it. I certainly wasn't. I was really surprised. It made me sit and wonder what was going to go on, because we were all working in politics at that time. And despite any differences that our senator might have with the president, obviously we were all going to work on his behalf to re-elect him. And it just kind of left me feeling like, where are we going now? And what transpired ended up being, of course, history, and not necessarily for Democrats, particularly good history.
Personally, how has LBJ's legacy affected your life?
Well, I just think so much of the civil rights legislation has changed this country so markedly and has opened up so many opportunities and made it more of a multicultural country. You know, obviously he ran into a real crisis in Vietnam, and there were a lot of us who had disagreements with that, but it was basically a no-win situation for him, and I think, you know, has come to light since then. He had deep doubts about what was going on there himself.
Could you tell us, just in closing, how big it must be to be meeting all of these alumni from the University Star? Not only your mom's leadership, but all the other people from the generations who've worked on the staff and the wonderful things they've done, not only in San Marcos, but throughout Texas. What does that mean for you to be part of that collegiality of people who've worked for the University Star?
The University Star has a really rich history, and I feel really lucky to be a part of that, even if it's for just a small fraction of it. You know, the University Star is an institution here in the community. I think we do a really good job. I know we'll continue to do a good job. And just connecting with all of these alumni, I mean, it just reiterates that University Star is a family. I mean, I see these people more than I see my own roommates, and I know it was the same for my mom and her coworkers then. So, it's a family.
Mom, you must be very proud of your daughter, and we do sincerely appreciate y'all's time this evening.
Thank you.
I am proud of her. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.